I share my screen.
Hi, everyone. We are super excited. We were just asked to do this. I don't know. We were supposed to do it during the snowstorm, but all of you know that that kind of threw a wrench in the plans. So it's good to be here. And so what we're going to be doing, of course, is talking about self-care for your sanity. So, you know, it's still kind of the start of the new year. So we are hopeful to give you some information that you find that you can integrate into your everyday life and maybe some things that you might want to work on. We're hopeful that we can give you some information to help you do that and answer any questions that you might have. So we also are going to be having discussions. So this is going to be our first discussion, and as much participation from y'all would be greatly appreciated. So I just have a few questions that we're going to be asking throughout, and we have some polls that we will put up. So if you could just participate, that would be super helpful. So first off, if anyone would like to share, what does self-care mean to you? And there's not a right or wrong answer, so please feel free. You can raise your hand or type in the chat. So let's just get some nice little conversation going before we get going. All right, spending time with myself or ones I love, that's great. Completely disconnect from the work version of me, just being able to be myself. Making sure I get enough sleep, that's a good one. Exercise, good.
Sam, do you have your hand raised?
Well, yeah, I was gonna talk, but I see the chat was coming through, but I was just gonna say, like, self-care for me is like checking into my body and like seeing, like, you know, if I'm hungry, like making sure I actually like step away and like eat something, and like being aware of like how much water I'm intaking and like those kind of warning signs, and like knowing, especially with how much screen time we're doing, like giving myself that few minutes away to give my eyes a break and just really checking in with kind of like what is telling me.
No, that's really awesome. That's so important to listen to your body, because it's going to tell you when something's wrong. It for sure will. And let's see, what else do we've got in the chat? Susanna, taking time for myself, spending time with close friends and family. Good. Abigail, recognizing when I'm overwhelmed. And Michelle, engaging in all the things that take me to my happy place. That's really, really important. All right. I love everything that y'all just said. That is spot on with a lot of things that we are going to be talking about today. So yeah, wow, thank you all for participating thus far. So we can move on to the next slide. So I'm just going to give you a really just clear-cut definition. There is not a right or wrong interpretation of this. Everyone's self-care is going to look different, and that is totally okay. According to the WHO, if you wanted to look up the formal definition, it is the ability of individuals, families, and communities to promote health, prevent disease, maintain health, and to cope with illness and disability with or without the support of a healthcare provider. So that encompasses a lot of things, as you can tell. Promoting health looks across a large scale and is interpreted by everyone differently: physical, mental, emotional, social. So all of those things. And also I don't know if anyone wants to say anything about what stands out to you specifically about this definition. I know it's really dictionary, but you can do it on your own. You don't always need a professional. It's true. That's very true. And I think on that, like, support can mean a bunch of different things, and it looks different for everyone. And I have, let's see, there's some hands raised. Let's go with Kara.
So I think the medical model in the United States is definitely not a preventative model, or it doesn't seem to be as preventative as it is in other places. And so self-care is really that ability to take those preventative measures, in my mind, in your own hands, with or without the help of your healthcare provider. Most of the time, I feel like they treat symptoms, they don't treat preventatively. So self-care looks like, how can we prevent chronic illness or injury, etc.
Good. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And then Abigail, would you like to share?
Yeah, just what stood out to me, I think, kind of backpacking off of what Kara just said, was the prevent disease. I hadn't thought about self-care as being necessarily preventative, but more trying to get me back to my my stasis, if you will. So it's fun to see the definition, including taking steps and actions that are preventative, not just
No, I definitely agree with that. I think a lot of times we think that the part that says coping with illness and disability is a lot of what, when we think self-care, we're going straight to like, oh, something has happened and I am needing to like reinforce like what makes me happy, or like how can I get myself back on the right tracks. But it definitely, preventative is very important, and when we're talking about self-care. So thank you all for sharing. I think we can move on, and my colleague Emily is going to talk to y'all about this slide.
Hey guys, thanks so much for your participation so far. It's great to hear everybody's responses. So this slide is basically showing some of the principles of self-care. So we can look at this from both a community and individual standpoint. Your community could be the people in your household, the people in your church, your organizations that you're a part of, your coworkers, any group of people that you belong to or interact with regularly. And at this level, we look at community involvement, support, and participation. So this is how much you're putting into that community and how much you're receiving in return. And these will fluctuate over time, but they're just things to be aware of when we're looking at self-care in general. And then at an individual level, we look at autonomy. So this is your ability to make decisions for yourself, do things independently. And then we have self-efficacy and empowerment, which kind of go hand in hand. It's your confidence and your ability to go through your daily life and get everything done that you need to get done, reach your goals, basically like how much you believe in yourself. And then finally, we have personal responsibility. And this is a big one too. It's taking ownership of your actions, feeling that you're in control of your life and that the things that happen to you are things that you're responsible for and that you can impact. So if anybody has, oh yeah, I think we have a poll for this one actually. Or maybe it's the next slide. I don't remember which slide. Oh yeah, okay. So do you feel like you implement self-care practices on a regular basis? And that could be those preventative measures that we talked about, anything that you categorize as self-care from both a community or individual level. And feel free to comment on these as well. All right, looks like we have a pretty good spread so far. 63%, oh no, these are changing. 56% yes, 44 no. So we look about half and half here. So that's good that we're aware of these things. It's always important to take that time and reflect on, how often am I doing this, and categorizing like what we think works in self-care, what we think like works for us, what we can do in our community and on an individual level to keep taking care of ourselves, preventing those chronic health issues. Got a comment here that 40-hour work grind takes up a lot of time I feel like I could use to engage in self-care. Yes, that's a huge struggle for a lot of us, like 8 to 5 work days. It's hard to make time for a family and chores and work, and that work-life balance is super important. So hopefully throughout this presentation, we can give you some tools and tips to help you find that balance. Do you find any of these principles standing out more than others? For me personally, I think it is very different person to person. So, and it's also different from different stages of life. For me, I think that at an individual level, you know, I'm a student, I'm growing a lot, learning a lot, challenging myself in different ways individually than I have before. And so I find myself needing a lot more of the individual aspects of self-care. But I know like later on in life, like when people have families or, you know, when there's different struggles in life, like relying on your community is another like huge thing. So I think it changes over time and it's something that we all need to, you know, be aware of. The pandemic as well impacted ability to engage in community-based self-care. Yes, that is huge. We actually have a slide on how COVID has impacted all of us coming up. All right, I think we're good for the next slide. All right, so what does self-care encompass? So this is from the WHO, the World Health Organization. So first we have hygiene. This can be personal in general, just taking care of yourself physically. And we have nutrition, the types of food you eat, specific diets, quality of food eaten. We're going to go into some of these things in later slides a little bit more in depth, but this is just a little overview slide so we can kind of break apart what self-care really is. And then we have lifestyle. As me and my colleagues know as physical therapists, you know, physical activities, super important. And then taking time to have hobbies and leisure activities is also really great for mental health as well. So lifestyle is, you know, one of my favorite aspects to look at and things that, you know, I feel like I can continue improving in my own life as well. And then we have environmental factors. So this has to do with living conditions, food availability, community access. Personally, when I first read this, I was like, well, how does my environment really, like, what does that have to do with self-care? But when you go back to that original definition of, you know, taking your health into your own hands and how well you can prevent disease, you know, with or without a healthcare professional, you know, your environment really does play a big role in that. You know, if you have access to healthy food, your living conditions, if you feel safe going out for a walk in your community, it does play like a very big role in self-care. And then finally, we have socioeconomic factors. So this is your income level, cultural, religious beliefs, things of that nature. Some of these things, you know, aren't going to change super fast. You know, we only have so much control over some of these factors, but we're hopefully going to give you some tips to maximize the control and do as much as you can to make the most out of the factors that apply in your life. And I think we also have a poll here, if we want to pull that up. All right, what aspect of self-care do you prioritize the most? And so we kind of broke this up a little bit differently. So we have physical activity, so that's exercising daily, physical nutrition, how much you focus on your diet, and then we have mental, spiritual, and social. So we just wanted to see, you know, what do you guys care about the most? What do you prioritize in your own life? And then hopefully we can give you some tips to continue prioritizing those and maybe also work on those areas that may kind of fall under the wayside. So wait for those votes to come in. Feel free to leave in comments. Work-life balance has been challenging, working remotely, working more and taking less breaks. Yeah, someone suggested taking or setting alarms every hour for a 5 to 10 minute break. I think that's a wonderful idea. Yeah, setting an Outlook calendar reminder. That's great. Those little tools and tips to step away from your work every now and then, stand up, go for a little walk, take some time to breathe, you know, take care of yourself in those days. All right, so it looks like we got 47% mental health, 11% physical activity, 11% physical nutrition, 32% social. That's great. All right, so hopefully moving on in this presentation, we can continue to prioritize those things together and also work on some other areas and find control that we can make big impacts in our own lives. All right, so here's that COVID slide I was talking about. So I know COVID has impacted all of us in ways that we weren't expecting over this past year. And so I did some research, and there was a survey that went out, and here's some of the results from that survey. Due to the COVID pandemic, 80% of the people in the survey intended to be more mindful about regular self-care practices after the pandemic. 64% were focused on mental health now more than ever, which we kind of saw in that last poll that we took. And 44% desired more guidance and support for practicing self-care during the pandemic. So I think it has shifted a lot of our focuses to realizing, I do need to take care of myself. And I think that although COVID had a lot of, negative impacts on all of us, I'm sure, it also helped provide some perspective and allow us to reprioritize some things in our lives. And then some more statistics, that's a hard word, some more statistics on the right. 46% reported struggling to find ways to maintain their physical, mental, and spiritual health during the pandemic. I know, gyms were closed, a lot of churches were closed, we weren't allowed to meet with our communities very often. That had a very detrimental effect on a lot of us. And I think that also, led to us realizing that these things are super important and we need to continue prioritizing them in our lives. And then 30% of Americans reported a lack of energy, 29% reported difficulty sleeping or exercising less, 47% feelings of social isolation. And then this one was huge. 45% of all US adults reported that they failed to get preventative health care during the pandemic. And so, when I read that, I thought that was a huge red flag. I think that it's so important to continue to see our healthcare providers and take preventative measures for our health. And that goes back to that very first definition of self-care. I think we need to continue focusing on not only self-care when we feel like, oh my gosh, I'm stressed, I need to do something for myself, but even when we're feeling good, it's important to take those preventative measures so that we don't get to those lower places. And then if you guys have any comments on this stuff, if you face any of these difficulties or struggles, feel free to leave a comment or chat with us about how COVID has impacted you. Samantha says, did you find that COVID has allowed for self-care to be a more common conversation topic? Yeah, I definitely have noticed that in my communities and even in this research, people are realizing that they want more guidance and realizing that it's super important to take care of ourselves. I think that facing these challenges has shown us just how important it really is. No more in-person Wildcats exercise groups is something for me that changed as a result of COVID. Yes, I know we've been doing our best to provide Zoom classes for you guys as well, but there is something about being in person with the community in those times that is really beneficial too. So it's definitely a challenge that we're working on overcoming together. The relationship between self-care and immune function is strong, and a strong immune system protects against COVID. Yes, that's also huge. Taking care of your physical health, your immune system is especially important in these times.
Abigail, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, personally, I'm pretty social, and with COVID, that's a lot harder. But I've actually found that I have been neglecting a lot of other components of self-care in favor of partaking in social activities, calling people on the phone or doing little virtual game nights or something. So I've had to, when reflecting kind of throughout this presentation, it's occurred to me that I've kind of stopped doing some of the other healthcare or self-care aspects in favor of trying to get that social desire in. Even just like with my partner in the house, I gravitate to doing things together, whereas before I might have left for a walk or something like that. So that's sort of my current struggle.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Abigail. I think that is a struggle that a lot of us face. I think that often we get very tunnel vision on one aspect of self-care and we forget about the others. And that's very natural. But I think that taking steps like this to learn more about it, practice being aware of these things, and recognizing that, you know, any step towards self-care is a good step. Let's see. Lost 2 family members, not to COVID, but COVID definitely limited social and mental self-care by interacting with family and friends for solace. Yeah, it's been tough not being able to interact with our communities, but these are just strategies that, you know, are times that we need to implement different strategies. So whether that's, you know, calling your family more often, it might be uncomfortable at first and unusual because it's not what we're used to. But I think that getting out of our comfort zones and challenging ourselves to be social in new ways is something that can really benefit all of us during these times. Yeah, thank you guys all so much for sharing.
Yes, yeah, y'all have been super awesome. This is great. Also, I just want to say one thing before we move on is Lisa said something about how she had one thing and then it kind of trickled down. And I think a lot of us fall into that cycle of something will happen and then it's just like a domino effect. And I know it's really, really hard to not let that get to us. But honestly, just being self-aware, which all of you seem like you are pretty self-aware individuals, which is really awesome. That's definitely a first step towards like recognizing in what areas you need to kind of focus on and, you know, how you're going to do that. So all of you seem like really self-aware individuals just based on the conversations that we're having, which is really awesome. So we have another question. So for those of you who did answer yes, or that you do partake in self-care on a regular basis, if some of you would mind sharing how you currently practice self-care before we start getting into a bunch of different ways that you can do that, if some of you want to share. See, Kara said walking outside, working in my garden, and on indoor plants. Okay, a gardener. Cuddling with pets, and talking with friends and family, and yoga. Ooh, Emily likes yoga. She loves yoga. I also enjoy going outside. Caitlin and I are total outside bodies. So COVID for outside, it's okay. You know, there are some things that have closed down, but for the most part, a lot of things stayed open. National parks are still available, which is good for those of us who like to stay outside. Walking and reading. All right. Love reading. Walking outside every day. Yep. Even for a short time. You know, something is always better than nothing. That's always what we try to remind people. Doing something for 5 minutes is better than doing it for 0 minutes. And a huge reader. So that's been a nice escape. Okay. 15-minute walk. Good. And playing with dogs. It's crazy how much animals are just so therapeutic. Like, they're great. Playing music. All right. Planning a trip for 2022. Okay. Planning ahead. I like that. Journaling. Oh, yeah. We haven't really talked about journaling. That's a new thought in this coming up in the chat. That's a good one. Daily inspirations. Dog. Cuddling with the dog. Spa days in the house. Okay. I kind of like the sound of that. I'm curious to see what that looks like, Michelle. Therapy, good. Bubble bath soak, go outside, sit in the driveway, socially distance, and visit with neighbors. That's really awesome. That's a great idea because you could just sit across, talk to each other. All of these, hiking, attending soccer games. Yeah, all of these are really great ideas. Thank you all for sharing. I know just as people, we learn a lot from each other. So, you know, what works for someone may also work for you. So if any of these things that people are sharing with you, if you feel like you could implement that, like just keep that tucked away in the back of your mind. And as we're talking to you, like as we continue to talk about some ideas that we have, like, of course, it's not all comprehensive. So if there's something that someone put in the chat, like just keep that in mind if that's something that you think that would help benefit you in improving your self-care, then yeah, there, like I said, there's not a wrong or right answer in any of this, and it looks different for every single one of us. All right, we can move on. Dr. Besner.
All right, guys. So I'm Caitlin. Y'all haven't gotten to hear from me yet. So I'm going to be talking about a little bit more of the specifics. So we've talked about a lot in general of like what exactly is self-care, what are the different types of self-care, and we've all kind of mentioned things that we do personally for our self-care, but now I'm just going to go through some basic tips, strategies, things that you can use to implement self-care into your everyday life. So we're going to talk with our physical self-care. So first off, talking about sedentary behavior. So sedentary behavior is whenever you're sitting down for long periods of time, you're laying down, basically you're awake, but you're not active. And I know that a lot of us are forced into this type of sedentary behavior because we work all day and you're at a computer, you're in an office. And so the best thing that you can do is, especially if you do have a job where you are sedentary, is to move as much as possible. So our bodies are made for movement and they want to move, and our bodies like nourish themselves through physical movement every day. So even whenever you're at the office every single day, just standing up for a little bit, maybe walking around in your office, maybe walking up and down the hallway, that can make a huge difference. And I think it was Kara that had mentioned maybe setting a timer every hour to just get up, stand up, maybe step away from your computer. So that's a really good thing to just do momentarily throughout the day. So it's recommended to get about 30 minutes of physical activity every day. But I think that people hear this and they think that that means that they have to go to the gym, or they have to go for a run, or they have to do some sort of really intense physical activity. And that's not what that has to mean necessarily. It could be something as simple as going for a walk. And I know a lot of you said that you enjoy going for walks, or you take your dogs on walks, and doing that every day is great for your health. I think another key component whenever you're trying to integrate some sort of physical activity or exercise is to find something that you truly enjoy and love doing. So for example, some people enjoy kickboxing, or some people really love to dance, so they take Zumba classes. And so finding whatever type of activity you enjoy and you get pleasure out of, and trying to integrate that into your daily activity is great, because you're going to be much more likely to do that on a consistent basis if it's something you actually enjoy. Yes, Michelle, Fitbits are a great way to remind you to get up. I get a notification on my watch every hour if I don't stand up, but it makes me really mad whenever I have been standing up for a long period of time and it just thinks I've been sitting down for an hour for no reason. But yeah, Fitbit, some sort of tracker is great. I have an Apple Watch, but yeah, Garmin trackers, Fitbits, it's a great way to just remind yourself of how much movement you've had that day. And if you don't have something like that, there are apps on your phone that you can get as well, that if you just have your phone in your pocket or anything, it will track your steps as you walk. So I know a lot of us take our phones wherever we go on a walk, or whenever we're going like to and from somewhere. So that's another good way that you can still track those behaviors and those activity levels without having to have an expensive piece of equipment. Another important thing for physical self-care is sleep. And I know one of y'all mentioned that as part of your self-care was making sure that you got enough sleep. So you want to aim to get between 7 and 9 hours of sleep every night. And that's really just going to allow your body to restore itself, to heal, to have some time to recover. And then it's also going to help your mentality and help you to be able to function mentally. So I know sometimes it's a little difficult to add in physical activity to your everyday life, but I think it's important to remember as well that, you know, those 30 minutes you aim to get every day, it doesn't have to be all at once. You can just do 5 or 10 minutes of activity just in shorter periods of time. Okay, so tips on how to promote longer and deeper sleep. So I think one of the best things for this is having kind of like a nightly routine, and also having like certain times that you go to bed every night. So for example, if you're on your phone or you're watching like a TV screen at night, that actually impacts your ability to get like good deep sleep. So I think I try to do this as much as I can, but just like reading for maybe 10 or 15 minutes before I go to bed every night, and then not looking at my phone before I actually go to sleep, is one of the best things for me to actually be able to get a good night of sleep. But then also, yeah, having that sleep schedule and going to bed at the same time every night and waking up at the same time in the morning, even on the weekends, that's whenever it gets hard. That will really help your body to get into that nice rhythm. Dr. Besner said, experimenting with what you eat in the evening, doing hard physical activity during the day, and meditation before sleep. Yeah, so certain foods can keep you up at night, certain foods can help you sleep. And then yeah, I like to go work out a little bit earlier in the day, because if I work out closer to night, I won't be able to sleep. I'll still be a little wired. Yeah, Megan, what do you have to add?
I just wanted to say we've kind of talked about this before in our classes, but one thing that Dr. Marshall, he works for respiratory care and deals with a lot of sleeping, is one thing that he's told us that really has stood out to me that I integrate in my personal life is making time that I spend in my bed just sleeping. So try to limit the amount of like time you spend on your phone or watching from the bed, because it will put your head in a proper headspace that like when I get in bed, it makes me sleepy and I'm ready to go to bed. So that's just another little thing that if you're doing a lot of stuff just laying down on a regular basis, it may be more difficult for you to fall asleep.
Yeah, Abigail asked a good question. She asked about whenever you wake up and can't get back to sleep, does anyone have any meditation ideas that they could recommend? Let's see, does anyone have any like strategies that they use to be able to go back to sleep whenever that happens? Let's see. Okay, there are apps that you can use to go back to sleep, like Headspace and Insight Timer. I know that there are also apps that I've used before that are just like soothing noises and stuff like that, and I'll sometimes turn those on, and that actually helps me go back to sleep. All right, good. Yeah, there are lots of good ideas in the chat. Calm app, lots of good apps that you can use for that. Perfect. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide. So another aspect of self-care that we talked about was nutrition. And I know for me personally, nutrition is always the aspect that I've struggled with a lot. So this definitely plays a crucial role in both your body and your mind being able to function optimally. So we want to aim to get at least 2 to 3 servings of both fruits and vegetables every single day. And we want to be choosing nutrient dense foods that are going to fuel your body for longer. So nutrient dense foods are just going to contain a lot more nutrients and vitamins in them. They're also going to be able to satiate you. So some examples of that would be foods like salmon or kale or berries, nuts. Those all have a lot of nutrients within them. So we want to stay away from those calorie dense foods, but that don't really have a lot of nutritional value, like things like cakes, cookies, that kind of stuff. I think a really important thing to remember with nutrition is that you don't have to follow a certain diet, or you don't have to go all in all at once into this really crazy diet plan, because that's so hard to keep on track with and stay on for a long period of time. The way that I've always liked to do it is I pick new habits and new things to incorporate into my daily diet. So for example, it started with me drinking a gallon of water a day, and that was like my #1 goal. And so I just focused on that, and then it became such a habit that it was something that I did every day, and I didn't have to think about it anymore. And so then something else I started to do was trying to avoid foods that have a lot of added sugars within them. And so trying to get my sugar sources from natural sugars, like things from fruit. So I think it's important to remember that you can make really small changes on a daily basis to your diet. And then over time, that kind of just becomes a habit, and it becomes something you naturally do and want to do. And then after that's become integrated into your routine, then you can start to add more things on top of it. And over time, it just becomes part of your normal routine. It's nothing different than you've ever known. And it's a lot easier than trying to go into things all at once. And it's important to find a diet that fits with your lifestyle and works for you long term. So finding something that definitely is going to give your body fuel, be able to get you through the day, give you lots of energy. And yes, plate.gov is a great resource that you can use. There are a lot of resources online. MyFitnessPal has like the free version on that you can download on your phone, and it's really good for tracking things, and you can look at the nutrient content within foods. So there are a lot of good resources out there to be able to use for this.
Hey, Caitlin, I was going to add one more thing, if I may.
Sure.
I think a lot of people think about food as good or bad, sort of dichotomously. And as soon as you label a food bad for you, we want it. That's how our psychology works. And so think about if you're doing that. Think about if you're doing that. And think about food as on a continuum, right? So there's foods that are will provide more nutrition, and there are foods that provide less nutrition. And in any given moment, when you're making a choice about what to put in your mouth for nutrition, think about what am I doing in the next few hours? What kind of nutrition do I need? And then select something that will help you. Like if you're really just going to sit around and binge Netflix, then you probably don't need the most healthiest food, and you can have something that maybe is a little less healthy because you're not going to be required to do something really important. But if you're about to go in to your supervisor and have a difficult conversation, you should probably make a choice for something that's more nutritious, because it's going to set you up for better success. So I try to be super, super intentional about what I eat. I can't do that all the time, and it's not realistic to think about doing it 100% of the time, but I feel really good about my choices when I do that, and I own my choices. So it goes back to that empowerment and confidence that Emily talked about in the principles. And so really owning your choices and making intentional choices in any given moment can be really empowering and helpful.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for adding that, Dr. Besner. She teaches a health and wellness class that we had our very first semester of PT school. And I remember her talking to us about this. And I've actually still kept that mindset to this day. And she'd also talked about not like punishing yourself mentally if you ate something that you think is a bad food. Like if you eat something, eat it because you want to eat it. And then if you don't want it after that, then don't eat it after that. But don't punish yourself or think like, oh, I shouldn't have had that or anything like that, because that can actually be worse for you and more detrimental than if you had just eaten it, been satisfied, and moved on. So I think that's a really important mindset to keep as well. And I think I started to have this shift over time as not seeing foods as like, oh, this food's good, but this food's bad and I can't have it, but more of, okay, this food's not as healthy for me. It's not really going to fuel me, but I can have it every once in a while. And so just keeping in mind that like, I can still have all of the foods that I want to eat. I just maybe shouldn't eat ice cream every single day like I would want to if I had that option. So it's all about the mentality. And I think looking at it from that perspective helps a lot. So thank you for adding that, Dr. Besner. All right, we can move on to the next slide. Perfect. Okay, so now going into a little bit more of the mental self-care. Because I know whenever we think of self-care, a lot of times we think about exercise and we think about eating right, but sometimes we forget that our mental self-care is just as important, if not more important, than just the physical aspects of it. So it's very important that we take time every single day to do something that is therapeutic to us, to do something that helps us to reflect on the day, to just relax, to take our mind off of things. So journaling is one of them. I know Megan likes to journal. She really enjoys that. So I know she was glad whenever one of y'all said that. She's a big proponent of that one. Listening to music, that's another one that I like. I like to go on walks and just listen to music on days that have been really stressful and I just needed time to like check out. Spending time outdoors, if that's something that you enjoy. I know reading was something that a lot of you had mentioned that you guys love, and then also meditation. So those are all good things to implement throughout your day. And then I think another thing too, I try to be intentional about adding these components into my daily routine, because at the beginning of every day, I try and have a list of the things that I need to do that day. And in that list, I'll put something in there that's not necessarily productive for work or for school, but something that I need to do for myself, whether that's reading for 10 minutes or whether that's just taking 20 minutes to sit on the couch and talk to my roommate. I try and make sure that I incorporate those things into my daily routine because they're just as important as all of the other tasks that I need to accomplish. Another thing is surrounding yourself with good people, because those strong social connections are really crucial to your health. And I know that with COVID, it's been quite a bit of a challenge, but also we just have to get a little bit creative. Like I know one of you had mentioned that you sit in your driveway and talk to your neighbors next door while they're in their driveway. So that's a great example of a way that we can still figure out how to have those moments of connectedness, but just do it in a little bit of a different manner. So I'm glad that a lot of you have created strategies to be able to still get that social interaction. And then I know someone else had mentioned volunteer work, and they enjoyed doing volunteer work as part of their own self-care, because being able to do something that you really enjoy and also being able to help other people whenever you do that just creates so much of a better happy moment for yourself as well. So that's an aspect of self-care, is caring for others and doing things for other people. And then also always getting help whenever you need it. So there are lots of resources from Texas State, which is very nice if you do have any issues and you need to reach out to someone. So it is important to remember that if you do need help, being able to recognize that and ask someone for that help is definitely a strength, and that is so hard to do. And that's never a weakness. Reaching out and asking for help is never a bad thing. So yeah, so those are just some tips on mental self-care. I don't know if y'all have any other things that y'all like to incorporate into your daily routine for mental self-care. A guided journal is good if you have difficulties just sitting down and writing. So that's a really good one to just have, like, maybe some prompts and stuff like that. Good, I like that. Perfect, I think that's all we had on that one.
All right, I believe that this is our last question. So now that we are done, we've kind of all had really good discussion about different things that we can possibly integrate. If anyone would like to share, if there's one area of self-care that you would want to improve on, and maybe what is one way that you can do that, and what are you gonna, like, what is something you may integrate into your everyday life? I know this is kind of a long one. Also, if you don't want to share, like, don't feel pressured to share, but we're hopeful to also leave you with some things that may continue to facilitate just thinking, brainstorming, and then when you leave this presentation today, that you'll, integrate that in your everyday life. All right, Kara says, physical exercise is something that you'd like to improve on, and utilizing the videos offered through WellCats. Yeah, that's really important. We have a ton of videos on the YouTube of all different lengths. We have like 5 to 10 minute videos or 30-minute videos. Kat says, diet, think about food as fuel for my upcoming activities and asking myself, what do I need for this activity? And I think that is, yeah, food is really important. And I think also this is something that we've talked about in class, is just keeping a food journal, and maybe keeping track of some things that you're eating and how do you feel, because a lot of times you're not going to maybe notice in the short term, but over time, if you continue to just fuel your body with things that makes it feel good, you will actually start to notice a shift in mentality and energy levels and just your overall general health.
Yeah, I think Dr. Besner had also mentioned whenever we took that class with her that you can basically do like a food journal. You can write down the things that you eat, but also writing down how you feel after you eat those foods. So keeping track of like, oh, I had this on this day, and then maybe like a couple of hours later, just writing down like how you had felt after you ate that food, just to be able to see what foods make you feel good, what foods really fuel you for what activities you're doing. So it can give you something to look at a little bit more objectively about your diet and, but also like your activities and what you do and how that makes you feel.
Great suggestions. We would encourage y'all's questions. I was also thinking of a specific question, which is, what is the biggest barrier keeping you all from engaging in these fantastic ideas that you've listed over here? What's the biggest barrier? Maybe we can help you problem solve through that. The balance, the work-life balance of time. Yeah. I'm not surprised. Yourself feeling tired. Yeah. So I'm wondering if you've tried actually scheduling it on your schedule. So time, everybody has the same amount of time. So time isn't as much of a barrier as prioritization is. So making it a priority would be doing something like, if you guys wanted to go to a meeting or needed to go to a meeting, you would put it on your calendar, I'm thinking, and you would just go when it comes up. You wouldn't even think about it. You can approach self-care the same way. Like sometimes I put blocks of time on my calendar and I just make it private. So people that access my calendar can see I'm busy, but they don't know doing what because I made it private. So I find that to be really helpful because then it's on my calendar and I can kind of relax knowing that I'm going to have that time and I don't have to worry about, when am I going to do this? There's also some truth to the fact that, oh, I just had a total blank. It's not self-discipline. What's the word I'm looking for, y'all? I have a whole book on it.
Willpower.
Willpower. Thank you. Willpower. So everybody wakes up in the morning with a full tank of willpower because it regenerates when we sleep. And every time you do something that you don't like, or that is hard, or that you resent, your willpower starts to deplete. So if you need willpower to do self-care, which sometimes when we're making a new habit, we do need willpower. Once it becomes a habit, we don't need as much. If you need willpower right now to start doing something you're not doing, then do it in the morning when your willpower tank is higher. So people always ask me, is it better to exercise in the morning or exercise in the evening? And I answer that question by saying, depends on how much willpower you need to get yourself to do it. If you need more willpower, then do it earlier in the day. If you don't need as much, then you can do it anytime. And physiologically, it makes no difference, except for the issue that Caitlin raised, which is if you exercise hard close to bedtime, you're not going to be ready to go to sleep.
So Dr.
That's
Bessner,
helpful.
Abigail and Sam had their hand up.
Okay. Go ahead, Abigail.
Yes, one of the things that I think I struggle with is just remembering that like things will make me feel good. Remembering that like exercise like will feed that endorphin, or that like eating better, like sometimes like you feel that like energy boost for having gotten what you need, or even not eating better, but just the endorphin of eating that craving that you had. It's like when you have a headache, but you spend so long just getting crankier and crankier before thinking to yourself, why does my head ache? Oh, let me take some ibuprofen or something like that. So I struggle with the kind of forgetting the end goal as opposed to being proactive about it.
Do y'all have thoughts on that, Megan and Caitlin?
I would say, because I'm kind of the same way. For me, what really helps is writing it down. Because a lot of times, like, even if it's just a little sticky note, I'm crazy. I have like little notes all over our house. And I have these little just pads of sticky notes that I keep with me because I'm very forgetful. I write pretty much everything down, even if it's something like, even if it's a habit I'm trying to integrate. So just writing it down, it kind of, for me, it brings it more to light and it makes me remember. But that's what I do.
Also, whenever I write stuff down, I feel like it's kind of a little promise to myself. Like if I say it in my head, I may not actually do it, but if I write it down, it's kind of like making an agreement with myself that I'm actually going to do something. So I think that's one of the biggest benefits of writing stuff down like that.
Yeah, there's a saying that goes, ink it, don't think it. And it kind of brings a little more accountability and commitment to yourself. I love that. I see some people writing about guilt, putting other people in front of yourself. These are common feelings, especially with women. So I've spent my whole research career studying women and physical activity and self-care, and it's very common. So you're normal, first of all. So just pat yourself on the back for that. And here's a couple of things to think about with that. So when you ride on a plane and you hear the opening message, who are you supposed to put the mask on first? Yourself. Okay, so think about self-care the same way. If you aren't taking care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. So that's really critical, but this is more important. All of you influence other people, right? You're influencing your children, you're influencing your spouse, you're influencing your parents. You're even unknowingly influencing your peers and your neighbors. If you take care of yourself, guess what? Your kids are going to learn to do that as well. And, you know, we all grew up in a generation where our mothers, it wasn't cool for our mothers to take care of themselves. They were supposed to take care of everyone else first. And, you know, I think about that with my mom. My mom was a fantastic caretaker, and she devoted her life to her 4 children and her husband. And we all are the benefits of that. But what did I learn from that? I learned I'm not supposed to take care of myself. So I can stop that by taking care of myself. And I can take care of myself, and then I'm a better caretaker of everyone else. So it really is okay. And I'm here to tell you, it's okay to take care of yourself. It's not only okay, it's required in our world today. You'll be better able to care for others. And so it's a hard thought process to change. And so like Megan said, maybe add some notes around your house, put a note on your mirror, you know, how am I going to take care of myself today so I can serve others better? You know, you are all the kind of people that love others. And so your compassion will not let you become self-serving. So I don't think you have to worry about that. So I'm giving you permission to put yourself first. I think that's really important and necessary, especially for young women who are influencing other people. So that's one thing. Second thing is, when you have a day where you've done something for yourself, think about that before you go to sleep. Hey, I actually spent time today taking care of myself. Good for me. That's a great first step. So positive thinking, there's a lot to positive thinking. Creating a brain space that is positive will help you be more creative and help you problem solve better when you have real barriers that get in the way. And some days, you know, some days I don't get to do my self-care because something comes up. But because I do it most days, that's okay. And the cumulative effect is real. So do you have anything to add, Caitlin, Megan?
Michelle, did you have something? Oh.
I do actually.
Hi, Michelle.
So one thing I actually learned from Dr. Besner, and I wanted to mention this because it's something that has resonated with me this entire time, is that when you are trying to manage your work-life balance, when you're at work, don't feel bad about missing out on everything that kind of makes your life, right? So like your children, because I knew a lot of times I had found difficulty with missing out on maybe my daughter's performance or something to that that's related to that. So since learning that, I've been able to be completely, you know, involved in work and not feel any guilt about missing out on whatever else I can't be involved in. When I am away from work and with my daughter and, you know, on a field trip or a doctor's appointment or something, being completely involved with that and not feeling bad about missing work. So I wanted to make sure to just relay that message because that's something that Janet shared with me, and it's just always kind of, you know, been in my mind every time that I'm, you know, navigating this work-life balance. And then I also do want to note that if you do add it to your calendar, your Outlook calendar, because I often had difficulty with prioritizing physical activity for me. If you do add it to your calendar, you get these alerts saying you have this, you have this, you have this. And so just like any meeting that I need to urgently attend, I need to urgently attend this physical activity. So definitely adding it to your Outlook calendar will make a difference. But I just wanted to share that before I go because I have a meeting at 1. But thank y'all for your time. This was great.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for your words of experience.
Yeah.
So I do have a lot of these copies of the book called No Sweat. So if you all are interested in this book, I have a bunch of copies. I will just send you one. Send me an email and tell me your physical address. I'm in Round Rock, but I can put it in the mail for you. I can put it in interoffice mail. It'll really help you get your mind around physical activity. I'd love to send you a copy. I love this book. Yeah, if you want it, send me an email, JB25. Let's give it up for Caitlin and Megan and Emily. Yay, good job, y'all. That was fantastic. Thanks so much. Thank you all for coming. Good luck with your self-care efforts. It's time well spent. You'll thank yourself for the rest of your life. So I hope you're successful. And if we can help you, let us know.
And I just dropped the course evaluation in the chat, and I also sent you an email. So whatever is easier for you, if you could just please share your feedback, we'd really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
We appreciate your feedback. Thank y'all. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.